Today we are taking a look at the awesome Rebor Deinosuchus, and this is the estuary version. So Rebor, they do two different versions of the Deinosuchus. The other version is a swamp variant, which has a lot more vibrant colours to it. Reminds me a bit of a Nile crocodile, the sort of coloration you see on the swamp version. Whereas this one does remind me a bit more of a saltwater crocodile. Along with the Deinosuchus, we do have one accessory, which is this mangled head of an Appalachiosaurus. And you can see how gruesome this looks. Details are just amazing. Looks very lifelike. Rebor definitely didn't skip out on details on this. Does also have articulation in the arm here, so you can move that around. We'll now take a closer look at the Deinosuchus. So we'll start off by taking a closer look at the head of Deinosuchus here. The first thing that stands out is the tip of the snout here on the Deinosuchus, which is very big and bulbous, which I believe is true to the skull of the Deinosuchus. We do have these really well done teeth. I really love the way that Rebor do their teeth on all their models. They're all done in this translucent plastic, which on some of the newer Rebor models they have added a slight yellowish tint to some of the teeth, which make it look a little bit more realistic. Of course, you do have articulation in the jaw here, as you just saw, so the top portion does move up and down. Now we do have a real good amount of detail inside the mouth. See the colour tones inside there. You do have some pinks and yellowish tones. And now it's got gloss over the inside, which does make it look very realistic. As we move to the neck of the Deinosuchus, you can see it's a very big, chunky neck. Of course, to support those very strong muscles. And you have lovely scaling and scoots running across the top here. And as you can see, the entire model is done in this two-tone coloration, where you got the darker tone running across the top here and a lighter tone underneath, which the coloration does remind me of a saltwater crocodile. You do have some striping running down. There is some very slight webbing between the digits there. And the claws are done in this same translucent plastic as the teeth. They are quite sharp. But there's no articulation in the arms. The underside looks very well detailed also. You do have a cloaca there. And you have these big scales underneath. And as we move down to the tail, the coloration does continue. You do have this striping going here with some yellowish striping, this tan colour that runs underneath. A bit more yellow on this side of the tail. You do have bendy wire in the tail, so you can position it however you'd like. If you need some room to display this, you can bend the tail. Yeah, this is very well detailed. Just a quick depth roll there. Amazing amounts of detail in this Deinosuchus. Here we have Deinosuchus with the Appalachiosaurus in its mouth, and the Appalachiosaurus does have bite marks on it across the top and bottom there, which you can line up with the jaws of the Deinosuchus, and it does look very cool with its prey in its mouth there. Now if you're wondering how much this guy weighs, I do have my scale here, and with the Appalachiosaurus in its mouth, you do have the Deinosuchus coming in at 738 grams. Lengthwise, I would say just slightly over 17 inches. Of course, my one is displayed with the tail slightly bent, so taking that into account, I would say a little over 17 inches. And for a comparison here, I do have the Deinosuchus and Sarcosuchus next to each other. And the Deinosuchus does look a little bit longer, but I believe they should be about the same sort of length for these two models. Overall, personally, I do really like this Deinosuchus model. I don't think we have very many good quality models of Deinosuchus. I know there are a few about, but none to this sort of standard or quality, which does definitely make it stand out. For me, I do really like crocodilians, well, animals in general, but I feel like crocodilians are just this very ancient animal, and as you can see from the Deinosuchus, their morphology hasn't changed too much from how they looked millions of years ago. The basic look and design of a Deinosuchus here does resemble modern day crocodilians, you know, big animals such as saltwater crocodiles, Nile crocodiles. The main sort of body looks almost exactly the same, apart from the head here. You do have some differences, and obviously Deinosuchus is a much larger animal, but the main sort of look is very similar to modern day crocodilians. The colour scheme is reminiscent of a saltwater crocodile. I feel like the darker tones go very well with the lighter tones that you get underneath, which gives a nice contrast to the model here and does resemble real life colour schemes of animals like the saltwater crocodile, where you do see this darker coloration. The coloration does really remind me of a large saltwater crocodile that was caught in the Philippines called Lolong, which I did in fact get a chance to see at the Natural History Museum. And you can see some pictures that I took of Lolong here, and you can see how the colours look very similar to this Deinosuchus. So I like the fact that Rebor chose a realistic colour scheme for this Deinosuchus, which represents an animal that is alive today, which is the saltwater crocodile. You do see a lot of them with that sort of coloration, and there are some that are lighter in colour, so the saltwater crocodile can actually change its skin colour to be lighter or darker depending on its environment. So maybe the Deinosuchus also had this trait, which is very interesting to me. But overall, I do think this is a very great model, and I would highly recommend picking it up. Thanks for watching.